Hello, everyone. This is Mike Kazahan from Cyber Power of Tigray. This evening, I have a very distinguished guest that I had the opportunity to invite, and she's been more than happy to come to the show and have some discussion about the crisis that's taking place in Tigray. Her name is, if I slaughter her, she's going to call me out on it, which is fine. I'm going to
It's
say
fine. Try. It's fun to hear it, though.
Lou Julian Bean.
You can just say Jalelu or Julia
Julia,
if
thank
it's
you.
easier.
Well, folks, I'm honored and humbled to have you on. She has been very vocal about human rights, women rights, among other things. I will tell you. I know some folks are going to be sensitive when we point out the truth. The truth is that there's crisis happening in Tigray. So while I'm going to cover a lot broader areas, the three main topics tonight are going to be the women being repeatedly raped in the city of Mekelle, the capital city of Tigray. So far, we have reports of more than 700 women have been raped, and some of them pregnant women. We have report of 750 civilians pulled out of Mariam Zion, which is a church in the city of Aksum, where the obelisk is found and the Ark of Cabinet is kept, which there are words that the main reason also is that the possibility for the Ark of the Cabinet to be taken out of Aksum and to Addis Ababa. That being said, the third topic that we're going to be covering today is Sabat Naga. Sabat Naga is in his 90s. He was seen and has been the hero of Ethiopia, now Tigray. Um, in the 70s and 80s, he was among the founder of the Tigray People Liberation Front that brought in a coalition of the EPRDF that overthrew Mengistu and brought in a democratic process to Ethiopia, which put Ethiopia on the top of the world when it came to its economy, its security in East Africa. It became an amazing country for nearly 30 years. The very person, Abiy Ahmed of Ethiopia, who refused to hold an election back last May, which then we would had in Ethiopia a prime minister by October, whoever the winner might have been, decided to become a dictator instead of a leader, and is now going after leaders who have served their country proudly and honorably and have retired from the military, from politics, and are being used for a propaganda machine, which I'll show you a video of how it's being broadcasted on Ethiopian national television around the world, those who follow Abiy Ahmed administration. With that, I am going to ask you to please introduce your name properly since I slaughtered it and who you are and what you do. And we'll jump right after that to our discussions. Thank you.
Yes. So greetings all. My name is Jalelu, or you can call me Julia, but I go by Jalelu, Julia Bean, and I am an entrepreneur. I have a business called Be Unique Solistic Care, and the focus is to enhance, empower, and enlighten on a solistic level. And as far as my connection to this, so I do a show on my page on Facebook, and it's called My Universe, Voice of the People. And how that transpired was me. I live in Ohio, and where I live at in Ohio, I met someone that was from Tigray. And I had never heard of Tigray before. Of course, I've heard of Ethiopia, but as far as Tigray itself, never heard of it. And so I became interested in learning more and more. And this was like over a year ago, about a year, almost a year and a half ago. And during this time, I was learning about the culture and the people and attended some celebrations. And I fell in love with the energy of the people and the love and authenticity of the people. And from there, I was already doing my show, my universe, Voice of the People. But in November, when the issue started to escalate after the voting issue that happened in Tigray, um, the person that I had connected with, his name is Sagai. We felt it was important to bring awareness in hopes that it would prevent what is happening now, right? And so we began to educate people about Tigray and to balance out the information because um, many of the media streams were only saying one side of the story. And it's important that as a people, as human beings, we see every side. And then as educated beings, we can decipher for ourselves and use the power of discernment to see whatever speaks to you. We have the right to do that. But it's important that your choices and your decisions are based off of crucial information. And so from there, we just continued on. And it opened my eyes up. I want to thank all the people of Tigray and all over. But just the energy of the people and everything that I've learned has really opened me up more to even my culture here, being born in here in America. Um, it showed how important culture and identity is, as well as resilience. So it gave me a better appreciation of myself as well as my people here, and found a new home in Tigray.
Thank you. So I'm humbled, and I know many Tagaru are grateful to have people like yourself who sees something wrong and say something about it. It is precisely why we also, as a diaspora, we start broadcasting an English program because many of our listeners, followers, talking in Tigrinya, as you know, is only emphasized and repeating itself within the Tigray community throughout the world. And so that's been one of the key notes that we have noticed is that the young diaspora also who are, Tagaru, born and raised in this country and throughout the world, their primary language is English, even though most of them can hear it, they can't speak it. So we want to cater to them as well as to our fellow Americans and Canadians and Europeans and Australians and all those who have a decency and believe in human rights, which brings me the injustice. I'm not a soldier, and so is you, obviously, but just from human perspective, when a war, even when there's politically divisiveness and there's a war declared among um, military, I can understand a country, like Ethiopia, is struggling to contain itself internally because you have multi-ethnic and you have a leader who was unelected, clearly uh, fails to uphold the Constitution, declares war against Tigray, and calls it law and order, which, by the way, was a topic stolen from Donald Trump. If you remember that, what happened, Bill, in March in Washington, D.C., how he wanted to go to the a church and order like, massive uh, abusive forces of the I mean anyway we saw what happened in Washington D.C. So that topic of law and order was that he told the world that in 3 days that he was going to go to Tigray, round up the leaders of Tigray, and then everything would be perfect. And we are approaching uh, almost 70 days since this war has started. We have an entire region. I saw earlier an article from several websites that Yahoo gathered, which Al Jazeera is one of them. BBC does pretty decent amount. But the point there is that we have an estimated 2.5 million people, excuse me, 4.5 million, I believe it was, people displaced internally, about 2.2 or so million, regardless of the number, high number of people displaced internally need immediate humanitarian assistance. And the level of children that are in needs of basic needs, it's catastrophe. So that brings me to those three topics that I mentioned, which is the level of massacre that's taken place. So, for example, let's go right into Aksum. So, in the last few days, it's reported more than 750 people had been pulled from the church in Aksum and killed, massacred. When you hear stories like this in 2021, what goes through your mind, and help the audience to understand this is seriously humanitarian crisis. This is genocide and it's making, and we only know this type of level of killing in history from what I read, at least myself personally. I can speak for myself, what Hitler did to the Jews. But I would love for you to share with us what you also been reading, what you've been following, how that makes us feel. And I want also the audience to know that we also specifically targeted African Americans in the United States to understand the political crisis that's happening in Tigray.
Yes. Um, so yeah, that situation alone is a lot. There's a lot of emotion that goes along with that. I mean, it's heartbreaking. The whole situation is, it tugs at my heart and my soul, because what comes to me often is why? Why? I mean, even, I'm sure people with with Hitler, why? Even here in America, being born here in America and being here for over 400 years, as far as my people go, is still why. You often hear those questions and you never truly get an answer. But my feeling is that, what else can you call it but genocide? What else? How can you explain killing innocent people anywhere? Anywhere. And for those who dispute some of the information that we are talking about, there's plenty of um, information out there that talks about what's happening, right? From the media, for those who need the mass media to confirm truths. But what better way to hear the truth than from the people who are suffering? Why hear it from a third party? Why hear it from, not to, no disrespect to any media streams that's covering it. But I do wonder why people need, how much proof do you need to say that there's a crisis and that justice is not being served? Because the message to me that's being sent out when people are not interfering, these organizations that are not, and I'll just drop names. I mean, the UN, the African, what is it?
African
I'll
Union.
abbreviations that they have out there but really they're organizations that are there to help and support the people in crisis. Where are you? What are you doing? Why is there so much conversation instead of jumping in and doing something? No one should suffer. And yeah, when you said, let's go back again to Hitler, and we talk about what has happened in slavery here in the United States, like, United States hands are not clean either, right? And I am not a politician, and I'm not, I am humanitarian. I'm human. And because I'm human, I feel human pain and suffering, and it's not right for anyone to suffer. And I'm calling out to everyone to open your eyes and ears and learn from this situation, because many may say, well, that's happening in Tigray. What does that have to do with us here? Everything. Because if you are one who preaches that, you know, people should have their basic needs met, and that, oppression is wrong, if you are preaching that, then there's no way you should sit on the side and say this is okay on any level. Because again, what you're sending a message to is to those dictators, to the oppressors, to the manipulators, and saying it's okay, do what you want, we'll stand out of your way. And it encourages others to step up to do it. Let's shut it down. So I hope that answers your question. I get emotional about these things because it does fuel me. I can relate to it. I being born here has been a struggle, and I think that for us Blacks in America can learn a lot from the people of Tigray, and I think that the people of Tigray can also learn from us. We have to build some type of alliance and share, um, and unify. And those are some of the conversations that I've been having with people. Is people saying, first step is to unify. The second thing I would say, because I did on my show, my universe, voice of the people. Um, I had another conversation with the guy, and we gave the audience a challenge. And that challenge, and I'm gonna challenge you all too. Let's reach out to 10 people, at least 10 people that may not know what's going on in Tigray. Educate them and let them know. Let them know, because there's a power in the voice. We have to use our voice. Don't allow your voice to be shut down.
And I think I had a discussion with you over the phone, just like to invite you to the show. You mentioned also, like, we were talking about how some Tigray origin are unhappy, and they feel like our people back home don't have voices at the moment because they're choked and cut off from the world. And I think,
Yes,
I'd love for you to, to kind of like touch bases on that, because I think there's a misunderstanding where we're not saying we are voiceless, we are the voice. But
yeah,
I think the misunderstanding that I'm hearing from folks around, and the message I get on Messenger and whatnot, is that they would say, thank you for being the voice for the voiceless. Well, no, we are actually voicing equally with our people, except that people back home right now, they are being choked by a dictator. So if we could, stay on that topic, and then I'm going to kind of share a screen to show you how Tigray has been choked and who the actors are, so that the audience that you challenge to reach out to 10, I would ask them to double that up. They have
hey,
social media platform. There's so many ways to reach out. So why not reach out to 20 to 40 people? And then out of those numbers, if you reach out to 40 people and you've educated like 15 to 20 of them, you've done your job.
Ashe, I love it. I love it.
But the when you hear people saying, like, thank you for, for being the voice for the voiceless, I, I don't want to, like, be petty, but I wanted people to understand that's really not, we're not the voice for the voiceless. We're voicing our concern with our people. And these kind of discussion that we're having, when 50 years from now, 100 years from now, when people look at it, they're going to look at it that those of us who care about humanity, we spoke out. I mean, I get people all the time saying, hey, using your real name, you're putting yourself at danger. Well, if speaking the truth, exercising my right to free speech puts me at danger, then that is precisely how we're looking backward. We are not thinking straight, and we're not thinking about, the equal rights, human rights. I mean, Tigray, I'm blessed to be born in Tigray. I'm blessed to be, blooded from Tigray. When I go there, I remember a while ago, this American woman from Chicago, she's a nurse, she flew with me from Addis to Mekelle, and she said, hey, what are the safety precautions that I have to take in Mekelle? I say, where are you from? From Chicago. And how is it in Chicago? Well, you know how Chicago is. And I say, I do. So if you made it fine in Chicago, Mekelle is not your problem, because you will love it. And here's my American number. So when you get back, let me know how you experience. Anyway, I'll make that short. But she was, she loved it, because Tigray is one of the peaceful home and welcoming to guests, and like, for someone like
Yes.
Lord, you go in there, you blend right into us, because you actually have that Tigray looked like anyway. So I thought actually initially when somebody sent me a clip on Facebook and I saw it, I was like, she must be born here from Tigray, but obviously
I think
no,
that
you are.
somewhere along the line, I mean, because Tigray speaks to my soul. And I want to say something. You know, it's funny that you brought up Chicago, and the sister that you said was saying that she was asking about McCullough. If you can survive in Chicago, you can survive anywhere, especially if you can survive Chicago weather in the wintertime. You know, oh, I just had to get that sidebar. But yeah, thank you. I feel like I have received so much love. And so many people have embraced me and encouraged me. And so when people tell me thank you, I have to give it back in return because I accept the thank you, but I'm also giving you a thank you as well because even you, Mike, I mean, you're included in that. I thank you all for just all the positive love energy that I'm receiving. And many people are surprised because when they do find out that I've never been to Tigray and just learned that Tigray even existed, maybe a year and a half ago, right? But I found my home, and I'm telling people, you know, for many, people loved the movie Black Panther, and it was like people were dreaming like, oh, we wish we could have a place like that. I'm saying that place is Tigray. Instead of saying Wakanda for life, we can make it real and say Tigray for life. You know what I'm saying? Because that is where it's at. Everything that when you watch Black Panther and just how the structure and the system is in place, I'm like, Tigray got it. So why don't we live it? Why not get out of the movies and realize that it's real? It doesn't have to be a comic book. And that's what, on another sidebar, I just want to say that one thing that really speaks to me too is just learning how, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from the people that I've talked to, so here in America, kids grow up and they have these superheroes, these characters like Superman, Wonder Woman, and all these other people. They're like, oh, you know, I wish I could be like them, but they're not real, right? They're characters from out of a comic book, and I'm not, no disrespect to that, but there's no sense of reality, and there's always something that you can't achieve. Like the superhero has these superpowers, and you know, you just wish you could be like that. But then when I talk to the people of Tigray, your superheroes are real human beings that existed. You can kick out names of warriors and fighters and people, freedom fighters, and that's who you learned about. It's no fictional characters. These are real people, and how powerful is that? I was asked not too long ago, like, because I was talking to a friend and they were saying, mentioning different freedom fighters from Tigray. And they were, and not just freedom fighters, but soldiers, because you know your soldiers by name, right? um and I was asked, like, for any of the battles that were here in the United States, um as far as African Americans or even Native Americans, can I name any, like, from the tip of my tongue? As far as African Americans, not really. Like, I would have to look and be like, oh yeah, this person, I remember I learned about them, right? So it doesn't just naturally roll off the tongue, but what rolls off are these superheroes that we learn about. And I think that the beauty is that the people to Tigray knows, you know your power, and the superpowers that we see in these superheroes, you see in each other, and that's true power. And again, that's something I think that we can learn from. And from this day on, I will start to speak the name of those ancestors and learn about them, because once you forget about them, they're gone, right? So it's important that you speak their names constantly and teach your children their history. And although I've always been one who knows some of my culture and have spread the word, I got to step my game up now. I've connected with Tigray. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I haven't been giving it any justice. And so I definitely have been encouraged to put more information out there about superheroes that really existed, and even the superheroes within, because y'all have a like y'all have a strong sense of self that's beautiful. And I'm not saying this because, oh, let's talk about junta. This reminds me of, because I've been called on social media by some people, oh, you know, good job, you're getting paid by the government and junta, things like that. I'm not getting, it's not like that at all. I'm speaking from the heart. I love you all. That's just
and
the truth.
and speaking for simply to stop genocide, speaking for stop, the cruelty towards humanity. Automatically, I mean, I've heard similarly, obviously, because I'm blunt and I'm my origin, obviously, and you can see it because I've got my flag behind me, I got my flag in my hand, in my head, and everything. So, I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
that is pretty typical for me. But I will.
I got my flag too, you just can't see it.
Oh, there you go.
Got the flag.
Love it. Okay, okay. So, all right. I had no idea. Now they're going to think I'm lying, but I had no idea. You actually
You
had the flag. See,
right. And I
oh,
thought I had the camera pointing to it so you can see it, but I guess not. So I'm going to wave it. Power to the people.
so
This is our flag.
that that brings me to the screen that I'm going to share with you and with the audience. The flag that you wave, the flag that's in my head and behind me, is representation of the blood of our brothers and sisters who sacrificed their lives for years for Ethiopia. Today, they're sacrificing their lives for Tigray. And the attackers, the invaders, led by the traitor Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki of Eritrea, it will shock to those who are not following, and it should make those who are providing false propaganda out there, it should give them a chilling concern that as Ethiopians, and particularly, I say this, I cannot, emphasize it enough, but I'll say it again, and I've said it many times, and I'll continue to say it. To those of you Amhara, you are supporting a killer that is killing your fellow Ethiopians. Tigray is not a nation yet, and you're pushing the envelope probably to that direction. But Tigray has never said it wants to split off from Ethiopia. But today, I'm going to tell you, all you Amharas out there, including those of you who are in the chat room, just like already calling us names, thank you for uniting Tagaro. Because what you've done is you actually united us like never before. Tagaro in the diaspora, even those who have never been connected in politics, those, including my 8-year-old daughter, is going to give a speech tomorrow in her classroom via Zoom about the protest she participated in Portland, Oregon on Friday. I mean, just imagine. I got an email from her teacher asking permission if she can share her experience about her roots and what's happening in Tigray. And I was humble to tell her that absolutely. So my daughter, however she wanted to do it. So my point here is that even the young children at age 8 are witnessing the atrocity and the injustice on civilians in Tigray that have nothing to do with the war that is supposed to be fought. But those who are out there fighting, so hopefully you can see this, but the way we're envisioning, you will see the hand fist with Tigray on it. So we put in, this is like, I just got this from Twitter. Somebody shared it with me. Actually, a high school buddy that I'm from years and years that I've known, but a few people reached out to me. So when you look at this, so you have Tigray, people say 6.5 million to 10 million people, regardless of the population. I'm not, population expert here, but the attack on one ethnic people from Tigray comes from the Ethiopian Defense Forces, the Amhara, Melita, and the regional forces the United Arab Emirates drones, Eritrean Defense Forces, regional forces of all regions, Melita, that is, Ethiopia is divided into 10 states. So every state in Ethiopia has contributed troops to support the federal troops while they dismiss and remove all those who serve in the federal military as ethnic base from Tigray. The very federal troops actually were actually formed as national army when Tigray sacrificed its people to overthrow the Derg back in the 90s. With that, imagine then they went ahead and shut down, which is the column down here. You see all service closed. That includes, shutting off electricity, the basic needs, water, and banks. And then Eritrea massively decided to loot every city in Tigray, with the exception that they didn't get a chance to enter Mekelle. But then the federal troops accomplished them when they snuck in, not in large military, but to basically wipe out hospitals through various cities in Tigray. And yet, they're supposed to be fighting against 64 people who Abiy Ahmed named. So when you think about it, is it worth this sort of crisis and catastrophe for a man who's hungry for power, chasing for 64 people, and you have now millions and millions of people displaced, over 700 women in Mekelle city alone raped, and the Amhara are so delusional that even their own leader, just a couple days ago, asked to his fellow generals in the military in Amharic, basically saying, "How could we see the city like Mekelle that we actually control? We have our own federal forces and police, but yet women are being raped. If it was in the battlefield and if it was in the, like there was a fighting going on, he said he can understand why." So basically, even his own statement, how disgusting it is, the fact that he insinuates if you're fighting, it's okay to rape women, but when you're not, and you're in the capital city, and somehow there's like network and connection now that goes out to the world, which actually is why he spoke about it, because the world now knows what's happening. He was like disgusted by it, and the Amharas, they don't need to go any further. I know you tried to educate earlier to those who are not tuned in to the various independent medias out there that are like sharing their concerns, are not taking Tigray side, not taking Ethiopia side, but genuinely distinguished reporters have been talking about this. Yet you have people still, including the government, denying that there had been no death in Tigray and none of this is happening, and then yet they contradict themselves. And so and the list goes on and on. So this is what you see, and then you see the man with a baby on his hand, the terror that people have to endure. So when we see something like this, help me to understand why people are struggling to understand this atrocity.
I mean, that's a good question, Mike. Let me start by when you were talking about the women being raped, which was it just that's very recent as well. And I mean it's been going on, but it's just mainstream media has started to talk about it now. So unfortunately, again, sometimes it takes mainstream media to make people believe that certain things are happening. So I do want to, it's a great article that I want to share with everyone. It's very short, and so I'll read it. Forgive me if I pronounce some of the words wrong. But this is from Reuters, and this was just 19 hours ago. And it says Ethiopian women raped in Mekelle, says soldier. It says soldiers and police in the northern Ethiopian city of Mekelle have expressed concerns about insecurity, with one saying women were raped this week after the city failed to federal forces during a war late last year. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed government declared victory in its conflict with the Tigray region's former ruling party after seizing McCullough, the local capital and home to 500,000 people on November 28th. Though the government says it is restoring law and order, aid agencies, residents, and the United Nations are concerned at ongoing instability and shortages. At Friday's meeting in McCullough broadcast on ETV, a state TV channel, an unidentified man in Ethiopian military uniform spoke of repeated abuses against women. I was angry yesterday. Why does a woman get raped in McCullough City? It wouldn't be shocking if it had happened during the war because it is not manageable and could be expected for such a thing to happen, he said. But women were raped yesterday and today when the local police and federal police are around. We need to communicate among ourselves and act together and strengthen our chain of command. No more details were given, and Reuters was unable to verify his account. Communications and access to Tigray remain hard. McCullough's mayor did not answer phone calls seeking comment, while National Military and Police spokesman, Abbey spokeswoman, and the spokesman for a government task force on Tigray did not immediately respond to questions. At the meeting on state TV, the new government appointed Mayor of McCullough, at Atakto Haile Selassie, said security forces would work more closely to guarantee peace and security. Another soldier complained that when criminals were arrested, there was no one to hand them to. Basic institutional structure has been destroyed, he said. A policeman said he and colleagues had not been paid. Airstrikes and battles since early November in Tigray are believed to have killed thousands of people. Fighting is continuing in some parts, and more than 2 million people need aid, the United Nations said this week. Fugitive leaders of the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, had vowed to continue to fight from the mountains, but Reuters has been unable to contact them for weeks. So again, that's a short article that was posted by Reuters. And I mean, it's heart-wrenching. And I don't understand how there are people who continue to say that this is not happening. Where are you getting that information? How can you close your eyes to what is happening to humanity? You are doing this to the people, and I'm not one to, again, to how can I say it? I'm not one who says, for the longest when I heard about how the Amhara people are treating the people to Tigray, I thought, well, surely they all don't have that view. And I'm not saying that they do all have that view, but I will say that all that have messaged me have had that view. And so I ask you, how and why do you think that this behavior is justified? How can you say that anyone deserves this type of life? I'm here to tell you that no one does. And it's ridiculous that what irritates me is when I read this article, how even, it says that something about, the United Nations are concerned. If you're concerned, what are you going to do about it? But as I told, my people earlier when I was on my show, we can't rely on others to solve our issues. We, the people, have to stand up for ourselves and unify, collectively build alliances with one another, and be in this fight together.
And I think, for some people, the question always, when you ask why, it's easy for them to deflect the question and then hijack the topic and then go into something else to justify, which is a sad reality here.
That's
And
denial.
right. And it's so to me, so we're talking about, okay, so if you if anybody not when I say you, I'm not necessarily saying you yourself, but in general, as a human being, when we think about it, to me, I'm sick and tired of like, repeating the same thing over and over, because my people are being murdered. My people are being like my fellow Tagaro are being raped, and young girls are terrified. Mothers are terrified, and it's sad because last year he made the promise that there will be a day that he will make mothers cry, and he will make children's cry, and it's you know I worry that for those Amhara who supposed to be good people, when they come and say we didn't know it was this bad because we weren't told, I'm afraid that the delusional mindset right now is going to be too late, because when we talk about justice, when we saw George Floyd gasping for his last breath for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, it was horrible. The world came united. It did. I mean, when you think about it, um, I've been activist throughout, like with BLM. So for those of you who might be like surprised why I'm out here talking about my people in Tigray, I've also been vocal about my people here in America. So this is about humanity. Okay, understand it. So I don't want to sugarcoat it. When somebody asks a question, why, answer the question, speak for the truth, stand for justice. When you have 750 people pulled out of a church and massacred, that's not a movie. That's not a story. That's a reality. When over 700 women in Megali are being raped, that's a reality. When so many of the farmers throughout the village of Tigray now are being, their livestock have been rounded up and slaughtered by Eritrean starving army, 500,000, the screen that I shared with you earlier, combined, over 500,000 troops were deployed to Tigray. They still don't hold 5% of Tigray from regional perspective. They go pocket to pocket, they attack, they fight, and they are yet to capture an actual leader that is in the military. So what do? They say, hey, if we see them what they eat, they attempted wiretapping, they attempted even using like traders to do so many other things. That failed. Then he came up and say, we'll pay you about 10 million Ethiopian birr, which is the equivalent of about 250,000 US dollars, if you help us to get the leaders of the Tigray government. That didn't work. What did he do? I'm going to share a screen with you guys right now. He goes after basically a man who was the founding father, among the founding father of the TPLF, the Tigray People Liberation Fighter, who I just described earlier the topic. This is what's being run on some of the news, comparing him with Saddam Hussein, who was actually a government for Iraq, and to demoralize the people of Tigray, my people, which we refuse to do so. This man right here was captured from his home. He was not fighting. He was not captured. He was, I think, perhaps move out of his house somewhere else because of the fighting, the amount of bombing that was taking place. And they are using him as a propaganda machine, showing Saddam Hussein of Iraq. And, Sabhat Nagam cannot walk without a cane. The man has been out of the army for many, many, many years, even way before Abiy Ahmed became a prime minister, which his term ended at the beginning of October. This is what they were doing with him. They've been, again, they've been using various tactics. Now they're using him as a show to demoralize. Their agenda is simple. This guy, imagine. I mean, you've seen this. This guy cannot even get up on his own and do things. So they're saying they captured like a leader of the army, a leader of the Tigray people. This is not the leader of the Tigray people. This is a hero who served proudly for Ethiopia and retired proudly years and years ago. And when his son tried to speak to them, saying, "What are you doing to my father? You need to treat him with respect. He have nothing to do with it." They shot and killed him. I mean,
Oh
think
wow.
about cruelty. And in America, I mean, someone who is at this age, they would have had a nursing home. Yet Ethiopia, shame on you. I mean, honestly,
So
shame on
Mike,
you.
Mike, let's clarify just to make sure I'm clear, and maybe some of the people out there are clear too. So you're saying that he was arrested, and then his son stepped up and questioned the people who were arresting him, and they killed him.
Oh, of course, yeah, because his son was like trying to let the troops. This guy, he's I don't know his age, but I read anywhere between 84 to 87. Various
Right.
comments that I saw. Regardless, at the end of the day, this might have nothing to do with the war in Tigray. But what they're doing right now is using him as a propaganda to rally up the rest of Ethiopians with Abiy Ahmed because he's unable to win a fight on the outskirts of the cities, which the Tigray leadership, when he announced that in 72 hours that he was going to bomb everybody in Mekelle, which houses about 500,000 people, they didn't stay there and fight. They actually vacated the whole city to save the people. So if we want to talk about who's doing right, who's doing wrong, it is very obvious, very clear. But this man that they're after, does he look to you like when you look at this? Does he look to you like right? This is the kind of
Wow.
propaganda that's being passed on.
Yeah. And again, that's a way to win favor and to justify. Because honestly, for those who are following the dictator, I I really feel that they from the like they really feel from the bottom of their heart that this is not wrong. I really feel themselves that this is not um and that's called brainwashing. And I encourage you all to step outside, free yourself from the bondage that you put yourself in to be a prisoner to a dictator or a slave to a dictator. I say to free yourself, to those who are believing all of this, that this is justified. Um, Free yourself, educate yourself. Don't follow the leader. Follow your heart and your soul, and knowing that no one deserves this type of treatment. This is cruel. And I have to bring it back home to my people, um, to learn from this and for us to speak out about it, because we have a lot of experience in that type of nature. Because again, being brought here from slavery, the mentality. Imagine, my biggest fear, and I'm going to tell the people to Tigray to don't allow your history to be wiped away. And I don't think that you will, but I'm just putting it out there too. That don't allow the oppressor to suck your soul out of you, because that's what they'll do if you allow them to. And being here in America, and losing all of our identity, our culture, our land, our language. Um, Many people may look at Blacks in America and wonder, how have you been here for so long but have so little? And to that I say, for one, we have a lot, because we, just as the Tagaru community is very resilient. We are very resilient people. We have survived this oppression for a very long time. And there are many people who still justify slavery as well as justify the behavior of those who violate our rights as human beings, even to this day. Um, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is, again, is I don't want to see that happen to any people. And that's often the agenda, is to suppress and oppress and depress. Um, and separate, divide and conquer. I'm going to keep saying that because when there's a formula that every oppressor and dictator, manipulator, abuser has. There's a system, a method. And unfortunately, it works, because you'll see it throughout history. They all do the exact same thing, right? So they have it written down, they follow it to a T, and it works. So my thing is, we have to have a formula, because our ancestors have left certain things in place for us, right? There are certain tools that we have to use in order to pull out of this and to rise and shine, which is going to happen anyway, because I'm speaking that into existence. But to those who question how legitimate this is, again, do your homework. Recognize that we are all human beings striving for the same thing. Why should you not feel safe in your own country? That doesn't make sense. And for Blacks here in America, that's how we live every single day, is not feeling completely safe in some way or another, for many, I should say. And again, I don't want that for any other people. And so I encourage you all to stay strong, to learn, and you are not in this alone. We are going to do this together and make it work. But there are lessons we need to learn from this.
And there's voices out. There's a lot of people. Friday we had worldwide protests. It was amazing because the level of support that has been showing is, this is clearly like the crisis needs to stop. I mean, really, like, what more, like you've been saying, what more do we need? We have the evidence that we need to know that civilians are being killed. And I watched another clip earlier that I'm not going to share it right now, but to just wrap up our show here, is that there was a Zoom meeting among the Ethiopian military that got leaked to the media, and they were talking about how the refugees in Sudan are they're going to go after them, and they're going to basically go after refugees in another country. So to me, so that's the propaganda. Like, I mean, not propaganda, but that's the kind of strategic they're planning internally within the government that is lost control of almost every part of the country as we speak. And let me just jump in a couple of areas, a couple of pointers right there and then before I let you respond to your feelings about when someone is making threat to refugee, calling them criminals, and want to go in and do something which Sudan will not allow, obviously, and the UN should not. But when you think about it, Sudan actually has entered over 70 kilometer, which is more than what the equivalent of about 50 miles or so, if not 40 something miles, deep into the Amhara region in Ethiopia. He doesn't have the army to fight it because the resiliency of Tigray, despite the 500,000 plus troops that showed up into Tigray, while our people are still being raped within the area that the Eritrean and the Ethiopian control, they've lost massive of its army. The federal government, the Ethiopian federal military is disastrous now. There's no an actual strength within the military in Ethiopia to defend from foreign invasion, which Sudan has taken, the opportunity to grab the land that it basically stated in 1902, Haile Selassie took away from Sudan. So regardless of, Sudan could have resolved, because under the previous uh, leadership, Meles Zenawi of Ethiopia, he'd made a deal actually with Sudan that they were going to solve it by discussion, which is what adults supposed to do. And the idea was that instead of fighting over, you would help the farmers either to relocate or figure out a way. And in fact, Sudan had agreed that they will allow the farmers in the Amhara region to stay there and not destabilize them, but the land will be recognized as, clearly that it belongs to them. And so instead, now you have the Oromo also fighting the Amhara in the south. You have another region called Beshangul Gumas that also is fighting, which actually the worst part in the eastern part of the country, southeast of the country. For those who are following the geography, I don't want to get myself in trouble there, but I mean, literally, the fight right now is happening with machete. And that's exactly what happened uh, uh, in east of Tigray and Hamara and Maikadra, obviously, that people were chopped off with a machete against. So, and in Washington D.C., the Amhara community celebrated with champagne, with Amharic music, dancing, and they try to say, victory of Mekele and victory defeating Tigray. So you massacre your own citizen, then you turn around and celebrate on the death of your own people. I'm not sure what kind of people these are, but if you can comment your sense of like feeling on the fact that you have still military in Ethiopia cannot even protect its own citizens internally, wants to go out for those who are suffering. I've been a refugee. It's not fun. And for to be insulted on top of that, when you can't find safety in your home, and the very government that's supposed to protect you calls you a criminal, and they want to come in and round you up and kill you. I mean, what more do we need? This guy has got to go.
I'm in total agreement. You know, the very things that you've been saying, I don't know what the answer is, honestly. It's one of those things that just gets deeper and deeper, and it's hurtful because, like you said, as far as the refugees go, first of all, um, and I'm sure you can speak to that. And thank you for being authentic and sharing that you've had that experience with being a refugee before. I'm sure that the living situation in general is not one that is desirable. I mean, to live in a refugee camp, from the articles that I've read and the videos that I've seen, yes, there is some layer of protection, but people are still dying of starvation in these refugee camps. Babies are dying because the mothers are not being able to produce enough milk because they're not getting enough nutrients. People who need medication are not receiving their medication. So imagine you already had to leave your home and walk miles and miles with your family to find a safe haven. And you find that even in this so-called safe haven is not safe. It's a haven, but it's not safe. It's somewhere that you can go. And now you have the threat of the government saying, you are all criminals and we are going to come and get you. So again, like you said, Mike, at what point are these organizations going to say enough is enough? What is the protocol? Why does there have to be a protocol on human life? Where does
That's right.
that come from? Why is human life a business, right? But we find out that's what slavery is, right? Slavery was a business, right? People make money off of this. It's a business for some. And that's what we're seeing here to people of Tigray. It's a business. And although you hear about the people who are suffering, you don't hear too much about the people who are making money off of the suffering. but there are so many people who are making big dollars because of what is happening. And war brings in dollars, right? So, and that's politics again. I'm not political, but I do know a little bit about history. I paid attention a little bit in school when it came to that. And I know about business for sure. But we need to shift the narrative about what politics truly is. Because politics, again, from my understanding, is supposed to represent the people. So my question is, what is this represent? Who are you truly representing? What is your agenda? What does it take to save human lives? How many lives have to die before enough is enough? What's the purpose of these organizations if you're just going to sit there and talk about the issues and twiddle your thumbs and say, oh, maybe it's time we jump in? At what point is it, no, we need to jump in? Um, so I challenge all of these organizations who are speaking how great they did over the year in saving lives when there's so many lives all over the world that are being affected. And I know we have to wrap it up soon, but that leads me to one of our other discussions, Mike, that we had about the health and the well-being of the people who are here and how it's affecting you all emotionally. So people, when they ask, well, what does that have to do with me? Well, the people that are here are working, right? So, and how can, and I've asked many people, how can you function on your job? You have a career, you have to provide for your family, as well as many people have been providing for their family there, or even in the refugee camps, sending money. So their family depends on these income sources. So there's already that pressure. But on top of that, not being able to connect, because, you know, for those who don't know about the African culture as a whole, the African culture is one about, like, family is number one. Family in America is a little different. Not everybody feels that family is number one. But definitely in the motherland, family is number one. So imagine whatever your number one is, imagine that being taken from you. How do you function and work day to day when you don't even know if your number one focus is okay? You have no way. Ted Ross talked about it. Ted Ross is the director of the World Health Organization, and he is being impacted. And I applaud him for speaking his truth, because him being a face that represents the world, it takes a lot of courage to speak your truth and say, this is what's happening to my people. And there are those, because I've said this very same thing before, and there are those who say, well, he didn't really talk about Tigray. He was just talking about his family. His family is Tigray, and he made it very clear. So, but the fact that he is in this very same situation is no different. When it comes to oppression, it hits everybody. Everybody. So again, my point is, so the people here that are working, it affects your ability to work. And not to say you're not still working, but you still have to. Many people are saying they're working physically, but mentally and emotionally, they're somewhere else, because they're trying to figure this out. But and many people feel helpless and don't really know what to do. And I think that when you talked about voice of the voiceless, I think that you made a good point, and even in the earlier conversation you and I had, when you were saying that you think that the voiceless, when people are saying that, they're saying because the voiceless are the people that's into God, and I was more so taking it as people feeling that they're voiceless. And in some ways, I think it varies, because some of the people that I've talked to do feel voiceless because they're afraid to speak out, because they may work for the government themselves or work in a position where they can't really speak out and say anything. So that's how it affects everybody, because it's affecting people's homes here in the United States. It's affecting the children. And the children are in school, and it's affecting their schoolwork. And so it's a chain reaction. And so we have to take all this other bull crap out when it comes to politics and numbers and this and that, and just look at the real deal. And the real deal is human lives. We all deserve to feel safe in our own home. How many of you out there don't feel safe in your own home? And for those who do, because a lot of people here may feel in the United States may feel safe in their own home. Imagine if that was taken from you. And by doing that, not only are you able to relate to the people of Tigray, but you're able to relate to everybody who has been oppressed and been stripped of their rights. So I asked you to shift your narrative and put yourself in that place and imagine how it feels to not have or be forced out of your land and to not feel safe. Because safety is the number one key to freedom. And once you take the safety away, there is no freedom.
Man, I think you said it all. I think um, we sadly are witnessing um, this crisis because we have a reckless man who was not a politician, doesn't understand hard discussions and differences are resolved when you sit down on a table and talk like a real people should. And the consequence of his failure to lead the nation has become a disastrous one. And as such, our people are suffering from it. And for those who disagree with me, you and anyone, they can simply look at the reality that's happening out there. This is pure and simple. When I mentioned George Floyd, not to forget about the other many um, African Americans who lost their life on the hands of law enforcement in the United States. But we, the people, arose together. And when white and black and Latinos and Asians and everybody came together for change, we are speaking together as one voice to ensure that my skin color should not put me in a higher risk than anyone who's lighter than me. I think in Ethiopia, the Tigray people has been perceived by the Amhara as second-class citizen. And
Yeah.
which brings me to racism, what you describe. I know we need to wrap this up, but
Yeah. Oh, we can keep it
racism,
going.
you
I
know,
was waiting for
so,
this part.
yeah. So I'm fully aware that that the Amhara rage and anger. I actually told some of my friends that what I'm discovering is some within the Amhara, they teach their children before they come out of their mother's belly to hate. And it's sad I say that because, you know, the Amhara benefited actually from the the way Ethiopia has been rebuilding its economy. And it's just it's sad that it wasn't enough for them. And those who actually always badmouth Tigray or Tagaru actually never traveled to Tigray to see that it was actually the most of the Amhara region, including Addis Ababa, which the central government is, that is being actually booming economically. It is only within the last 2 years when the Tigray leadership left Addis Ababa and said, hey, you know what? There's political differences. There's a lot of things that we're not going to agree to when Abiy Ahmed tried to consolidate power. They just say, we're going to actually focus for Tigray. We're going to rebuild Tigray, and we're going to let the rest of Ethiopia come in and work together and figure out what the political solution would be. At no point did Tigray imagine that it actually would be attacked left and right by its own, people, by its own military. I'm really ashamed the Ethiopian Defense Forces that actually work side by side was built on the blood of the Tigray people who fought the previous administration came back to allow the massacre and the terror that's taken place. On the other hand, Eritrea, the people of Eritrea and the people of Tigray, we talk like the same, we walk the same, we listen to the same song, we are identical to the same people. What Isaias Afwerki, who's been a dictator for 30 years now, wanted to do is he wants to make sure that his mercenaries go to Tigray, destroy Tigray, build hate from the Tigray people towards the Eritrean people, so that the Eritreans and the Tigray people will never, live side by side. But he is wrong that too, because Eritreans in the diaspora and Eritreans at home understands that is not what they stand for. They do not agree on what's happening in Tigray. So you have the Eritreans waking up, participating in our protests and saying, "We want you to know how sorry we are. We're going to rebuild Tigray with you together because we are one." And that yet, I'm waiting for the good Amhara to come out and remove their racism. Just kind of we have white elitists in America. When the good white people come out and say no to racism, I would love for the Amhara to do the same, but now, not tomorrow, not wait another day, and then to come back later. So I would like you to, whatever thought you have, to finish up with this show, and then I'll do my closing statement in the end. But this is your basically summarize. Tell us what you know. I do. So let me say this. I appreciate you. I know it's late in the East Coast. Next time I'm gonna have to work it out where we might have to do it like a little earlier, or maybe do it on a Friday or Saturday or something. But
You
it's
know what? This is my life journey. This is my purpose. So whatever time works for the people, whatever time works for the people, I'm down.
thank you, sister.
Mhm.
So I'm gonna let you do closing statement, encouragement words to our people in Tigray. They will have a chance to see this video. I know we have many of them and throughout outside Tigray that are following us, that are listening to us. They appreciate you. I know we have a few stubborn ones that are being negative about in the chat room. That's okay. That's what democracy is all about. But
That's the freedom of speech. I'm not knocking anyone for their opinion, right? Everybody has the right. It's when that right is being taken from you that it becomes an issue. And just as all of the Tagaro that I have been connected with openly allow anyone to express their feelings, there's no type of oppression there. But on the other hand, these people are constantly coming into chats and conversations and saying negative things and just bringing that negative energy. None of that is necessary. It's not necessary. You have the right to feel how you want to feel. That's what this is all about, the freedom to choose. But don't deprive others of that freedom to choose or knock them because they're utilizing their right to that freedom. We have to, freedom don't come free. That's what they say. And it's true. It's always a price to pay. I don't know why, because it's our born birthright to be free. But like you call the stubborn people, so maybe we will call people. I like that. The stubborn people are the ones that like want to control, and say that the only way to freedom is their way and their way only. Um, just respect each other's opinions. I haven't met not one Tagaru that has truly said derogatory things about any group of people, right? The focus is on fighting for justice for all. It's not just for the people of Tigray. It's you all are fighting for everybody to have their right, and you have stood rooted in that truth from day one throughout history. Check out the history, to everybody out there who doesn't know the history. And I think was the unfortunate thing about the history of Tigray is that you hear it, but the history, but it's not associated with Tigray. It's associated with Ethiopia. So you just hear about how great Ethiopia is, and Ethiopia did this and had these great things happening, and they've done over the years throughout history. But when you do your research, you see that most of that came out of Tigray. It's not to say, build anybody's ego and say, oh, we're better than you or whatever. No, truth is truth. And that truth is the history tells it. And I don't see, you know, any negative intentions that's out there saying, we're trying to prove that we're the best, we're number one. But on the opposite, the stubborn ones, that's what you all are saying. We're number one. Get off of that. Just recognize you could be number one for yourself. I'm number one to me. But as a whole, we are all individually number one. We all are a priority. We're all important. And we can't survive without each other. And that's what we see. We see the destruction of humanity because we're trying to survive without each other. And if you look at the law of the universe, when you look at nature, nothing survives without the other, right? We all depend on, it's called interdependency. We all rely on others. And I know many of you, I'll end it like this. Many of you may have seen or even own the little bumper stickers that say coexist, right? What is really coexisting? Why is it that we can see everything in nature coexist, but us as human beings who are supposed to be the most smart of all of them, right? Of all living things, why is it that we cannot coexist? And why is it that it's due to the stubborn ones? That small percentage, I would say 0.0005% of the world has this mentality, but they're able to gain momentum because what they do is use reverse psychology and say they divide and conquer. And in the dividing and conquering, they claim themselves as the majority and then appoint everybody else as a minority because they divided everybody, right? And that's how they gain momentum. It's an ego thing. And we have to understand the psychology of that. We have to understand the mindset of it in order to reverse it. So you be real with yourself to all the stubborn ones out there. And, I've been stubborn in my life too, but it's a time when you have to wake up and smell the coffee. So smell the coffee and embrace all that the universe has to offer you. And the very thing that you want, that freedom, the very thing that you want as far as safety, that's what we all want. So stop trying to force your idea of what freedom is. Everybody has the right to define freedom for themselves. So define it for yourself and just allow it to be for yourself and allow others to be able to do the same.
Thank you so much. I know we had a lot to cover, but I'm going to invite you another time to come back.
Yes, I
Thank
love
you.
it.
Thank you so
you.
much. So I'm going to do a quick closing statement. I'm going to then end the broadcast, but I'm going to chat with you in the studio, so I'm going to have you hang tight. I'll make it quick. I normally do it both in English and Tigrinya.
Oh, nice.
Bear with me. So when I add Tigrinya, like it's basically the same thing that I'm going to say in English. So, but I've got.
Mike, can I add one thing to that? I'm glad you brought that up. One quick point.
Absolutely.
I encourage you all, because everybody plays a part in this, and I'm glad Mike brought up about saying it in English and in Tigrinya. I encourage you all when it comes to any media sources. The problem is that if we're trying to give information about what is happening to Tigray on a universal scale, then it has to go beyond just the language of Tigray or Eritrean or Amharic, because we have to reach everyone. So I encourage you all, as you get these resources, to translate them when you post them. You can post it in your language or any other language you want, but I encourage you to choose another language to translate it in as well. And I know it takes work and time, but that's part of the revolution, and we can all play a part by simply doing these little things.
Excellent. I agree with you. In fact, there is some information that I forgot, I failed to mention in the show. Now I am going to, because you reminded something else too, is there are a group of people who actually wants to create new propaganda and are creating a coalition to counter the injustice, the protest that we are doing, and we have been doing it, we're going to continue to do, that they are trying to sway people that nothing is really happening in Tigray. Don't let the United Nations send an independent investigators to investigate. Don't allow independent media to go in, because that's what the government is saying. So we've seen all of these things happening. So in one hand, it's sort of like, in one hand, he's doing like what they call it, like, don't, it's like typical you would say, don't bite the hand that feeds you. He's biting the hand that fed him, right? And then he's having all these denials saying like nothing is happening in Tigray. But when the international community that's sitting idle right now because the US has been the biggest obstacle, by the way, the UN had attempted to have a resolution which would have a mandated to send an investigating team that is an independent investigators, UN mandated. In that case, the crime that has been committed in Tigray, those who are held accountable for their actions would actually be brought to justice in The Hague, which is the ICCU, the International Criminal Court. What that really basically means is that the African Union has failed. It has no mandate, no power to do anything as long as Abiy Ahmed can bribe the top dog, which really is what happened, right? But with the United Nations, there's a resolution in 1948. The UN had passed law that basically supposed to be in wars, all military personnel supposed to protect civilians. And when they fail to do so, the UN then intervenes, does their own independent investigation. It's very important, this part that I'm saying. When they investigate, they have a mandate. The mandate is that after their investigation is over, whether someone from Tigray has committed the crime or from Amhara, that individual or those groups of people, including the military, would be held accountable because then they have the mandate to bring them to court. Whereas if you have the African Union or if we have the Ethiopian handpicked like investigators go in and investigate, they don't have a mandate actually under the international treaty within the UN to arrest and try them in a court of law. That's what we're talking about, democracy. That's what we're talking about, the independent aspects of it, including sending independent journalists to go to Tigray and let them see it for what it is. Then we don't have to argue. To the Amharas who I call them out to come out and speak about it, I wouldn't have an issue with you if you agree that there should be an independent investigation, there should be an independent media outlet in Tigray to report everything that's happening. So then you could then like disregard anything that I said. If you think I'm making stuff up, if you think actually 750 people did not get killed in Aksum just in the last few days, if 700 women have not been raped in Mekelle, and there were not massacres throughout the region, then that's fine. You can live in a different reality because I don't think people are living in the world that we live in because there's enough information out there already. But to do that, the digital, somebody say, how come there's not digital? Well, you know what? The US actually has a satellite of what's happening. So if really, so the fact, there's a lot but I want to save some of the discussion for another day because I know it's getting late for you. So I wanted to say I say my people, Tagaro, ayoho, nana, kabjagani na torina, kabjagana torina Tagaro, zuna tatorare, hagarna tatorare, jagana ayatatna, hadara hiwamna ayer, zahavna hadara, ክንርሶ አይብልናን ኢና ሓደ ኻ ታሪክ ኣሎ እዩ ዝበሃል ታሪክ እንታይ እዩ ሓደ ሓላፊ ተሞይቱ ካሊእ ሓላፊ እዩ ዝትካእ ሓደ ተጋዳላይ ተሞይቱ ተፀዊኡ ካሊእ ተጋዳላይ እዩ ዝትክኦ ስለ ዝኾነ ሞራልና ክትንክፉ ንሰብሓት ነጋ ኣሲሮም ከምዚ ኢሎም ዝብሉ ዘለዉ ሕዚ የጭወርብዎ እዮም ዘለዉ ንህዝቢ ትግራይ እዚዩ መዳኸሚ ሞራልና ንክትንክፍ ኣብ ዓለም ዘለና ተጋሩና ኣብ ዓዲ ዘለና ተጋሩ ከውድቑና ንኣና ኮነ ኢሎም ዝሰርሕዎ ዘለዉ እዚዩ ክትንክፈና ይብሉን ሓቦና ሒዝና ምስ ህዝቢ ትግራይና ክትዕወት እያ ትግራይ ንዘለኣለም ታሪኻ ኣይውሰድን እዩ ኣይዝረፍን እዩ ጅግና ትግራይ ኣይንበርክኸን እዩ ናይ ትግራይ መሬት ንወራሪ ኣይተዋፅኦን እያ መእተዊያን መውፅያን ምንፀላይ ኣይፈልጣን እዩ መረፅ ናይ ትግራይ መሽረፈት ኣብይ ኣሕመድ እና ኢሳያስ ኣፈወርቂ ህዝብና ንግዚኡ ተጎዶ ፅባሕ ንጎ ድማ ተጠየቕቲ መን እዮም ንሕና ንፈልጥ ስለዚዩ ኣየኹም ኣብ ዓለም ዘለኹም ተጋሩ ምሳና ኣብ ጎኒ ጎኒ ኮይና ንሰርሖ ዘለና ታሪክ ደስ ክብለኩም ኣለዎ ሞራልና ክትንከፍ የብሉን ተሓባበሩ ኣየኹም ብሓደ ኢና ኣብ ኢትዮጵያ ዘለኹም ተጋሩ በተለይ ዓዲ ኣምሓራ ኣዲስ ኣበባ ዘለኹም ጨኒቁኩም ዘሎ እየኹም ክወግሐልና እዩ ክወግሐልኩም እዩ ኣብ ጎንኹም ኣለና ተጋሩ ኣብ ኣሜሪካ ዝኔና ኣብ ኩሉ ዓለም ዝኔና ተጋሩ ኣብ ጎንኹም ብጣዕሚ ተጣናኺርና ንዓድና ንህዝብና ክትዕወት ብዓቕምና ነብሲ ወከፍ ኣይንድቅስን ዘለና ስለዚ ሓደራ ክብለኩም ከዓ ካሊእ ግዜ መፅኦም ከም ግዚኡ ቀርበልኩም እየ ዘሎ ሓድሽ ዜናታት ኣጋይሽም ከምፀልኩም እየ ካብ ንራኸብ ደሓን ኩኑ ኣይዞኹም so to summarize what I say I told my people I'm telling you my people what Abiy Ahmed and Isaias Afwerki is doing to divide our people to demoralize our people the people of Tigray the great nation of Tigray to be will not be nailed into the enemy. Those who hate Tagaru, you are mistaken. The civilians who you're hurting, their pain will haunt you. I'm a father. I can only imagine if someone's harming my children, the pain and the suffering they will feel. If you have a sister, if you have a brother, if you're a son, a daughter, if you're a parent, you should have a decency. You should have a human heart that we're not seeing war in Tigray. We are seeing genocide in Tigray. And I call it genocide because 750 people from one church is genocide. And I call it the way it is. If you don't like it, do the reality check. It is not my problem that you are unwilling and unable to see the inhumane, the injustice that's happening to the people of Tigray. The people of Tigray have gone through this in the past. This isn't the first time they experienced it. But I never thought that it would happen again in my lifetime. That I thought it was over. That Ethiopia has learned from its past mistake. That Ethiopia had embraced itself within the people. The 80 plus different tribes, the 87 different languages, 110 million people of Ethiopia. I thought as Ethiopians, we were leading Africa, that we were going to bring Africa together, unite the continent, live out the heavy weapons that is shipped to Africa from Europe and China and Russia and America to use on our own citizens. So with that, my guess is that we are going to continue to see more sad stories. So to the Tagaru who are feeling down on themselves because they feel hopeless, don't feel hopeless. I know saying that isn't necessarily maybe going to uplift you, but think about the history of Tigray. We have been through this. Many of you in the diaspora, including me as a child, we became refugees in Sudan, and we went through horrible timing. To the people of Sudan, I am so grateful that you are our neighbor. You've been there every time Tigray needs you. As Muslim majority country, Sudan, you embrace my people. I'm a Christian person, but you embrace everybody. You didn't care if I was a Muslim, if I was a Christian, if I didn't believe in religion. You welcome me as a refugee. You welcome hundreds of thousands of refugees in the 80s. Today, you're hosting over 60,000 or so of my people who are suffering. And the Ethiopian unelected government is threatening to come in and hurt those people. Don't take my word for it. There's a video that's leaked that the military discussing about it. It's not supposed to go out, but it is out there. So to my neighbor Sudan, to the government of Sudan, to the people of Sudan, I say to you in Arabic, which is thank you, shukran. With that, I end my show. I look forward to seeing everybody back here again. Thank you so much.